Jesus told more than 40 parables. Most people can name 5. But here is what almost nobody talks about. Every single one of them follows the exact same hidden structure. Once you see it, the parables stop being separate moral stories and become one unified argument. And that argument is about something far more radical than most Bible lessons ever let on. Matthew 13:34 states plainly that Jesus spoke to the crowds in nothing but parables, not sermons, not law, not direct theological instruction, only parables. And then his disciples came to him privately and asked why. That question and the answer Jesus gave is the key that unlocks everything. Because if Jesus had a deliberate and specific reason for this method, if he told his disciples, as Matthew 13:11 records, "To you it has been given to know the secrets of the kingdom of heaven, but to them it has not been given," then the parables are not just charming illustrations, they are something closer to encrypted transmissions. And they share a common code. That code is what we are going to call the Kingdom Inversion Pattern. It is not a modern invention, and it is not something scholars have layered onto the text from the outside. It is a structure that Jesus himself identifies, repeats, and reinforces across every major parable he tells. And once you can name it, you will never read these stories the same way again. Here is the pattern in its simplest form. God's kingdom operates by a consistent reversal of human merit systems. The person the audience expects to be blessed ends up on the outside. The person nobody expected, the one who had no standing, no credentials, no religious resume, ends up as the heir. And this happens in a 3-part movement that repeats across every cluster of parables: invitation, response, and unexpected verdict. Every parable plays a variation on those 3 moves. Before we get into the individual stories, we need to understand why Jesus used this method at all. When the disciples asked him directly in Matthew 13:10, Jesus quoted Isaiah 6:9-10, the passage where God tells the prophet to go and preach to a people who will hear but not understand, who will see but not perceive. This is one of the most sobering passages in the entire Old Testament, and Jesus applies it to his own ministry. The parables, he explains, simultaneously reveal truth to those willing to receive it and conceal it from those who have hardened themselves against it. The form of the teaching is itself a judgment. If you approach the parables looking only for moral lessons, you will find moral lessons. If you approach them looking for the hidden architecture of an upside-down kingdom, you will find something that reshapes everything. The Greek word Jesus uses in Matthew 13:11 is the word mysteria, mysteries. It is not referring to things unknowable or spooky. In first-century usage, a mystery was a secret that had been hidden, but was now being disclosed to the initiated. The parables are disclosures, they are unveilings, but only for those with ears to hear. Now let us apply the pattern. Here is the first move, and it was the one that made religious leaders want to arrest him. The first and most provocative cluster of parables all make the same explosive claim: the kingdom belongs to the wrong people. By wrong, I mean wrong according to every social and religious category that first-century Jewish culture had established. These parables would have landed like a grenade in the crowds that heard them. Start with the parable of the prodigal son in Luke 15:11-32. Most people focus on the father running down the road to meet the returning son, which is a beautiful image of grace. But the parable does not end there. It ends with the older brother standing outside the party, furious while the father pleads with him to come in. Jesus does not tell us whether the older brother ever enters. The story simply stops. And that open ending is deliberate because the older brother in this story is the Pharisee standing in the crowd listening to Jesus. He has been faithful, observant, and dutiful. And in the calculus of human religion, he is owed more than the wreck of a younger brother who wasted everything on reckless living. But the father's logic, the kingdom's logic, runs in the opposite direction. The invitation goes first to those who know they need it. The parable of the workers in the vineyard in Matthew 21-16 pushes this even further. Because here Jesus does not just reverse the expected outcome, he has the landowner explicitly defend the reversal. Workers hired at the 11th hour receive the same wage as those who, in the landowner's own words, bore the burden of the day in the scorching heat. And when those workers complain, which is a completely reasonable complaint by any human standard of fairness. The landowner says, "Am I not allowed to do what I choose with what belongs to me? Or do you begrudge my generosity?" The Greek word there translated as generosity is agathos, goodness. The landowner is not being unfair. He is being good in a way that exceeds the categories of fairness entirely. And that excess is exactly what the kingdom looks like. The parable of the Pharisee and the tax collector in Luke 18:9 through 14 is perhaps the most compressed version of the inversion. Two men go to the temple to pray. One is a respected religious leader. One is despised as a collaborator with Roman occupation. The Pharisee's prayer is, from a certain angle, factually accurate. He does fast twice a week. He does give tithes. The tax collector can only say, "God, be merciful to me, a sinner." And Jesus delivers the verdict in one sentence. "I tell you, this man went down to his house justified rather than the other." The expected verdict is reversed. Position confers nothing. Posture determines everything. The parable of the two sons in Matthew 21:28 through 32 makes the same argument with even more economy. A father asks both sons to work in the vineyard. One says yes and does nothing. One says no and then goes anyway. Jesus asks which one did the father's will. The answer is obvious. And then he applies it directly to his audience, telling the chief priests and elders that tax collectors and prostitutes are but entering the kingdom ahead of them. Not instead of them, ahead of them. The door is not closed to the religious establishment, but they are being lapped by people they had written off entirely. The pattern across all four of these parables is identical. Invitation goes out. The expected recipients either reject it or receive it on wrong terms. The unexpected recipients, the ones with no religious standing, receive the verdict of blessing. First move confirmed. Here is the second move in the pattern. The kingdom is never where you expect to find it, and it never looks like what you expect it to look like. The second cluster of parables all share a focus on hiddenness, slow growth, and the jarring gap between what the kingdom looks like in the present and what it will eventually become. These parables are aimed primarily at the disciples, who were confused and increasingly discouraged by the fact that Jesus' movement looks so small and so marginal. If this was truly the Messiah, why did the kingdom look like this? The parable of the sower in Matthew 13:1 through 23 is the gateway parable. Jesus himself says in Mark 4:13 that if you do not understand this one, you will not understand any of them. A farmer sows seed across 4 different types of soil. The path soil produces nothing. The rocky soil produces quick growth that dies under pressure. The thorny soil produces growth that gets choked out by competing desires. Only the good soil produces a harvest, and it produces an extraordinary one, a 100-fold return. The point Jesus is making is subtle and important. The apparent failure rate of the kingdom's expansion is not evidence that the kingdom is failing. Most seeds do not produce fruit. That is not a flaw in the farmer's plan. It is simply what seed sowing looks like. The question is not why so many do not respond, but what is happening in the ones who do. The mustard seed in Matthew 13:31 through 32 takes the hiddenness theme further. Jesus says the kingdom of heaven is like a mustard seed, which is the smallest of seeds, but which grows into the largest of garden plants, large enough for birds to nest in. This would have been almost comically counterintuitive to his audience. They were expecting the kingdom to arrive with military force, with visible power, with an obvious and unmistakable display. Jesus says it starts smaller than anything you could imagine. You could miss it entirely. And then one day you look up and the birds are nesting in it. The parable of the leaven in Matthew 13:33 is only 2 verses long, but it reinforces the same point from a different angle. A woman hides yeast in 3 measures of flour. 3 measures is an enormous amount, enough to feed 100 people. And the yeast works invisibly, imperceptibly, until the whole batch is leavened. The kingdom of God is working beneath the surface of history. You cannot see it working, but you will see the result. And then come the 2 parables that complete this cluster in perhaps the most striking way, the hidden treasure and the pearl of great price, both in Matthew 13:44 through 46. In the first, a man stumbles across a treasure hidden in a field, not while searching, just while going about his ordinary life. In the second, A merchant has been searching for fine pearls for a long time and finally finds the one of ultimate value. The circumstances of finding are completely different. One is an accidental discovery, and one is the culmination of a long, deliberate search. But the response in both cases is identical. The finder sells everything he has and acquires the thing of supreme value. Everything else becomes secondary. The cost is total. The kingdom, when it is truly seen, restructures every other priority around it. Second move confirmed, the kingdom is hidden before it is revealed. It grows in ways that defy expectation, and it demands everything when it is truly understood. Here is the third move in the pattern, the king is away. What you do in his absence determines what happens when he returns. This cluster of parables is eschatological, meaning they are oriented toward the future, specifically toward the gap between Jesus' first and second coming, and toward the question of what faithfulness looks like during that interval. The parable of the 10 virgins in Matthew 25, chapter 1 through 13 is one of the most structurally precise parables in the entire gospel. 10 bridesmaids are waiting for the bridegroom to arrive. 5 have brought extra oil, 5 have not. The bridegroom is delayed, the king is absent, and the wait is longer than anyone anticipated. When he finally arrives at midnight, the 5 without extra oil discover their lamps are going out. They ask to borrow from the others, but the answer is no. Not because the 5 prepared bridesmaids are selfish, but because readiness cannot be borrowed. It cannot be transferred. And while the unprepared 5 go to buy more oil, the bridegroom arrives and the door is shut. They knock. He says, "I do not know you." This is a parable about the one thing that cannot be improvised at the last moment, genuine preparedness. The Greek word translated as ready in verse 10 is hetoimoi, which carries the sense of being in a state of readiness, not just having once made a decision to be ready. The 10 virgins all wanted to be at the wedding. All of them intended to be there. Intention is not preparation. The parable of the talents in Matthew 25, 14 through 30 deals with the same absence and return structure, but focuses on a different question. What do you do with what you have been given? A man entrusts his servants with varying amounts of capital, the Greek word talenton, which gives us our English word talent, referred to a unit of weight in money of extraordinary value, and then leaves. When he returns, the servants who invested what they were given have multiplied it and are welcomed into their master's joy. But the servant who buried his talent to keep it safe, to avoid any risk of loss, has it taken from him. And this is shocking, because burying valuables in the ground was actually considered a responsible form of security in the ancient world. The servant was not lazy in a conventional sense. He was playing it safe. But the returning king judges safety itself as a form of unfaithfulness. The kingdom does not reward risk aversion. It rewards the willingness to invest what you have been given in the king's purposes while he is away. The parable of the wicked tenants in Matthew 21, 33 through 46 is the most explicitly Christological of all the parables, the one where the allegory is closest to the surface. A vineyard owner leases his property to tenants and travels away. When he sends servants to collect the fruit, the tenants beat them, kill them, and send them away empty. Finally, the owner sends his son, thinking they will respect him. But the tenants see the son coming and reason among themselves that if they kill the heir, the inheritance will be theirs. So they throw him out of the vineyard and kill him. The vineyard owner then comes and destroys those tenants and gives the vineyard to others. Matthew records that when the chief priests and the Pharisees heard this parable, they understood that Jesus was speaking about them, and they sought to arrest him. The parable is a compressed retelling of Israel's prophetic history. The servants are the prophets, and the son is Jesus himself. And it ends with a verdict that the vineyard will be given to a people producing its fruits. This is the most dangerous parable Jesus told. It is the one that most directly precipitated his arrest. The parable of the wedding banquet in Matthew 22, 1 through 14 brings the third cluster to a close with a two-part twist that is easy to miss. A king prepares a wedding feast for his son and sends out invitations, and the invited guests refuse to come. Some make excuses, others actually seize the king's messengers and kill them. The king's response is to destroy those murderers and send his servants out to the main roads to invite anyone they can find, good and bad alike, until the banquet hall is full. So far, this sounds like a straightforward expansion of the invitation, which echoes everything from the prodigal son to the workers in the vineyard. But then comes the second twist. The king comes in to see the guests, and he spots a man who is not wearing a wedding garment. He asks how the man got in without one, and the man is speechless. The king has him bound and thrown into outer darkness. This addition is unexpected and, to modern readers, can seem harsh, but it is theologically essential. Inclusion does not mean unconditionality. The invitation is wide open. The highways are swept. Anyone can come. But everyone who comes is expected to be clothed appropriately for where they are. Arrival is not the end of the story. Being found in the right condition when the king appears matters just as much as accepting the invitation in the first place. Third move confirmed. There is one final cluster of parables that we need to bring in here, and these deal with the ethics of life inside the kingdom. What kingdom citizenship actually looks like in practice. Because the kingdom inversion pattern is not just about who gets in. It is about how those who are in are expected to live differently. The Good Samaritan in Luke chapter 10, 25 through 37 is perhaps the most universally known parable Jesus told, but its original context is often stripped away. A lawyer comes to Jesus to test him, asking what he must do to inherit eternal life. Jesus throws the question back to him, and the lawyer gives the correct answer: love God and love your neighbor. But then the lawyer asks a follow-up that reveals his real interest. And who is my neighbor? He is looking for a boundary. He wants to know the limit of the obligation. And Jesus tells him a story in which the person who demonstrates genuine neighborly love is a Samaritan, a member of a group that faithful Jews in the first century considered both theologically corrupt and racially suspect. The priest and the Levite, who represent the religious establishment, pass by the wounded man. The Samaritan stops. And at the end, Jesus does not answer the lawyer's original question of, who is my neighbor? He instead asks, which of the three men proved to be a neighbor? The inversion is in the question itself. You do not get to define who qualifies as your neighbor. You become a neighbor by acting like one, regardless of who the recipient is. The parable of the unforgiving servant in Matthew 18, 21 through 35 closes the loop on the entire framework in a remarkable way. Peter asked Jesus how many times he must forgive a brother who sins against him. 7 times? Jesus says not 7 times, but 77 times. And then he tells a parable about a servant who owes his master a debt of 10,000 talents, an incomprehensible sum, the ancient equivalent of a national debt. The master forgives it entirely. That same servant then goes out and finds a fellow servant who owes him 100 denarii, a few months' wages, and has him thrown in prison. When the master hears about it, he is furious and hands the first servant over to the jailers until the debt is paid in full. The point lands with force. The people who have received the kingdom's extravagant forgiveness, the forgiveness that restructures the entire relationship between humanity and God, are expected to extend a proportionate, overflowing forgiveness to everyone around them. The logic of the kingdom flows outward. You cannot receive grace and then withhold it. The economy of the kingdom operates on a principle of grace, received becoming grace extended. And here is the thing worth sitting with at the end of all of this. Jesus used the word parable, skleron, the Greek word for parable, deliberately. Parable literally means something placed alongside. A parable is a story placed alongside reality in order to reveal something about that reality that direct description would miss, or that the audience would deflect if stated plainly. Jesus did not teach in parables because the concepts were too simple to need explanation. He taught in parables because the concepts were too revolutionary to survive a frontal approach. If he had walked into Jerusalem and said plainly, "The religious establishment has forfeited its position. The despised and excluded will inherit the kingdom. God's grace will extend to everyone willing to receive it, and all of this will cost you everything you currently trust in," he would have been arrested immediately. Instead, he told stories about farmers and seeds, about fathers running down roads, about workers and wages, about women hiding yeast in bread. And the people who were willing to think listened, and something opened in them. And the people who were not willing to think heard a nice story and moved on. The parables are not gentle fables for children. They are a systematic, carefully sequenced argument about the nature of a kingdom that inverts every human assumption about who matters, where power comes from, what faithfulness looks like, and how grace operates. 3 moves repeated across every major parable Jesus told. The kingdom belongs to the wrong people. The kingdom is hidden before it is revealed, and the king is absent but is returning. So what you do now with what you have been given, in service of those around you, is the whole of what it means to live as a citizen of that kingdom. Once you see that pattern, it doesn't go away, and I don't think Jesus intended it to. If this kind of deep biblical pattern recognition is what you come here for, there is a lot more where this came from. Subscribe so you don't miss what is coming next. And if this video added something to how you read the Gospels, share it with someone who would want to see it too.